Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most crucial parts of India's democracy, the judiciary. It's a system that really affects everything, from huge government policies all the way down to our own individual rights. So let's get right into how this whole thing actually works. So just think about this for a second. What happens when two states can't agree, or when a new law feels like it's gone too far? Or, and this is a big one, when your own fundamental rights are on the line? Who gets to be the final referee in all of this?
Well, that's where the judiciary comes in, and it's so much more than just a bunch of courts. You've got to think of it as the third pillar of democracy, standing right alongside the legislature, which makes the laws, and the executive, which puts them into action. The judiciary's job to interpret those laws and, maybe most importantly, to be the ultimate guardian of the Constitution.
Okay, so how is this massive system even organized? Well, it's definitely not just a random collection of buildings. India has what's called a single, integrated judicial system, and the best way to picture it is as a giant pyramid. This pyramid structure is really the key to the whole thing. Right at the very top, you have the Supreme Court, the final word on everything. Just below that, you've got the high courts in the states, and then at the base, you have all the subordinate courts. This whole setup means that decisions can be appealed, moving up the pyramid, which creates a really smart system of checks and balances inside the judiciary itself. And this is where that phrase, a single integrated system, really shines. What it means is, unlike in some other countries, we don't have separate laws for the central government and the states. The very same set of civil and criminal laws applies everywhere, to everyone. It ensures consistency from the smallest local court right up to the Supreme Court. All right, let's zoom in on the very top of that pyramid. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court of India, the highest judicial power in the entire country. We'll look at who's on it and what incredible powers it holds. As the final court of appeal, its decision is the law of the land. It's made up of the Chief Justice of India and up to 33 other judges, and they're all appointed by the president. And when the Supreme Court makes a ruling, that's it. It's final, and it's binding on every single court across India. Now, the Supreme Court has some really unique powers, and the first one we've got to understand is called original jurisdiction. This sounds complicated, but it just means that for certain really big, high-stakes cases, the Supreme Court is the first and only place they're heard. They don't start in a lower court and work their way up. So what kind of cases are we talking about? Well, we're talking about major disputes, like a disagreement between the central government and a state government, or a conflict between two different states. And crucially, it's where you go if you feel your fundamental rights as a citizen have been violated. That's a direct line to the top. The next big power is appellate jurisdiction, and this is probably what most people think of when they hear Supreme Court. This is its power to review decisions that have already been made by lower courts. It doesn't matter if it's a civil or a criminal case, the Supreme Court gets to take a second look. It is, quite literally, the last stop for justice. And here it is, maybe the most important power of all, judicial review. This is absolutely profound. It means that if the parliament passes a law, but that law goes against the Constitution, the Supreme Court can step in and declare that law null and void, gone. This makes it the ultimate check on the government, making sure that nobody, not even the lawmakers, is above the Constitution. So we keep talking about fundamental rights. But how does the court actually protect them? I mean, it doesn't just write a strongly worded letter. It issues these powerful legal orders called writs. You can think of them like emergency tools the court uses to directly step in and protect a citizen's freedom. Now, there are 5 major types of these writs, and each one has a very specific job. Let's just touch on a couple. Habeas corpus literally means to have the body. It's a powerful tool against being locked up illegally. It forces the authorities to actually bring a person before a judge. Then there's mandamus, which is a direct command from the court telling a public official, hey, you have to do your legal duty. Each writ is a way the judiciary actively enforces the law. Okay, let's travel one level down our pyramid. Now we're at the high courts, which are the highest judicial bodies you'll find within each state. So the Constitution says every state should have a high court. Sometimes, though, you'll see a single high court serving a couple of smaller states or union territories. For most major civil cases within a state, we're talking things like property disputes, wills, things like that. The high court is where it all kicks off. And just like the Supreme Court, high courts kind of wear two hats. They have their own original jurisdiction, meaning they are the first court to hear certain types of cases, like divorce or company law. But they also have appellate jurisdiction, acting as the first place you can appeal a decision that was made by one of these subordinate courts below them. So we have these two incredibly powerful courts at the top of the system. But what are the real differences between a Supreme Court judge and a high court judge? Let's put them side by side and see. This table breaks it down really nicely. First, look at qualifications. To even be considered for the Supreme Court, you need to have been a high court judge for at least 5 years. And notice the retirement ages are different. 65 for the Supreme Court, 62 for the High Court. But the special power row is really interesting. The Supreme Court has advisory jurisdiction, meaning the President of India can actually ask it for an opinion on a legal question. High courts, on the other hand, have revisory jurisdiction. They can call up the records from any case in a lower court just to make sure everything was handled fairly. So, we've looked at the pyramid, the different courts, all their powers. But let's zoom all the way out and ask the most important question. Why does any of this actually matter? I mean, why is it important for the country and for you? Well, it all comes back to this one powerful idea. Think about it. Without an independent judiciary, those other two pillars, the legislature and the executive, could pretty much do whatever they wanted. There'd be no checks and balances. The judiciary is there to make sure that no one has absolute power. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. The entire judicial system, from your local court right up to the Supreme Court in Delhi, exists for two huge reasons. First, to be the final word on what the law means, making sure it's applied fairly to everybody. And second, to be the ultimate protector of your fundamental rights as a citizen of India. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This constant balancing act, juggling the power of the government on one hand and the rights and freedoms of the individual on the other, that is the day-in, day-out work of the Indian judiciary. It's a living, breathing process that really defines the nature of our democracy. Thanks for joining me.